It's almost here! Red Nose Day, the record breaker!
It's late 1998, and the folks over at the charity organisation Comic Relief are putting together their next big telethon event to be broadcast on the BBC. Jonathan Ross, Lenny Henry, Davina McCall, Dawn French, and many more are hosting a fundraiser for needy causes across the world. The chosen musical anthem of the night was Boyzone's #1 hit, When the Going Gets Tough, and one of the sketches being drawn up for the March 12th, 1999 telethon is a Doctor Who sketch. If you want to know a brief history of Comic Relief and more specifically Doctor Who's role in the telethons, then I already did a video on that which you can go and watch, but this video will be about the history of this specific offbeat enterprise, how it came together, and whether or not it holds up. But before we get started, this video was made possible thanks to the support of my patrons. As many of you folks know, I work in the TV and film industry, which is having a bit of a moment right now. Theo, say thank you to the patrons for helping to keep you fed.
I will obliterate you all.
No. And if you support me on Patreon, you can get these videos early, you can get your name in the credits, and you can also get access to a Mr. TARDIS Discord server. And you can also sponsor these in-depth videos. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank the Lower Decker for sponsoring this video. In the description below is a link to their Tumblr, where you'll find fun, creative content based around Doctor Who, cosplaying, and more. They're also studying TV and broadcasting, so go and show them some love, and give them a follow if you're on Tumblr. Also, thanks to DC63 Productions for sponsoring this video. They're a YouTube channel who have been making Doctor Who fan films for a decade. They even released a 90-minute epic last year for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, The Heart of Time. They're shooting a new series with a new Doctor this year, so it's a good time to jump in if you're wanting to see new fan projects. A link to their YouTube is in the description. If you want to support and sponsor my work, then check out my Patreon, and if you can't support me financially, that's fine, just leave a like, any comment down below, and subscribe, those really help me out. Now, without further ado, The Curse of Fatal Death. Let's rewind to previous telethons in the 90s. Some of Comic Relief's biggest hitters were sketches that not only made audiences laugh, but acted as platforms for well-known IP. In 1995, there was a sequel to Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist in Oliver 2: Let's Twist Again, and in 1997, shows Prime Suspect and Cracker teamed up for Prime Cracker, the former of which is impossible to find footage of, and the latter, well, the whole thing's on the Comic Relief YouTube channel. The producers of Comic Relief were wanting a similar event for 1999, and one of those producers was Sue Vertue, who was a producer of Mr. Bean and the Vicar of Dibley, a hugely well-connected name in British comedy. Her husband was also up-and-coming Scottish writer Steven Moffat, who was obsessed with Doctor Who, which had been off the air for almost 10 years. Sue Vertue suggested the idea of a Doctor Who comedy for Comic Relief. Since Doctor Who had been off the air for almost a decade at this point, fans who grew up with the series would be older and have nostalgia for it, as well as disposable income. Sue Vertue had definitely noticed the mountains of VHS tapes and original novels that the show had spawned piling up in her house thanks to her husband. There was a committed fan base here, with money to potentially donate, and with her comedy writer husband of Press Gang fame, Comic Relief and the BBC approved the project. And if you're wondering whether or not there's a lot of nepotism involved in this project, with Steven Moffat having inseminated the producer, don't worry, because Steven Moffat absolutely leans into it, including that very specific wording.
Having inseminated the producer, I obviously was obliged to work for Comic Relief at that stage. Since Sue, and it was Sue that I inseminated rather than Richard Curtis, suggested that we do a Doctor Who Comic Relief sketch because I like Doctor Who.
Why are you the way that you are?
The team, including Comic Relief co-founder Richard Curtis, immediately approached Mr. Bean himself, Rowan Atkinson, for the lead role of the Doctor, not just because he was a big name in British comedy who happened to be taking some off time after the Mr. Bean movie the year before, but because he'd voiced his desire to play the role of the Doctor in the 1980s.
I like to play James Bond. I once thought I'd like to play Doctor Who. But I didn't.
Richard Curtis, being a fan of Doctor Who himself, approached Atkinson, who accepted the role as the next Doctor. While producers worked to assemble a crack team of actors for the project, Moffat went to work on what was initially supposed to be a 2-minute project, which quickly ballooned into a 20-minute episode, and it quickly became the main centerpiece of the 1999 telethon. Well, that and Johnny Depp guest starring in a Vicar of Dibley episode. Due to the serialized nature of classic Doctor Who, which relied on cliffhangers, they could split the episode into parts and broadcast them across the night. With Steven Moffat being a huge Doctor Who fan, he obviously wanted to make something funny for comic relief, but also something that paid respect to the source material, even going so far as to canonize the 1996 TV movie starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor by having Rowan Atkinson play the 9th incarnation of the Time Lord. Remember, this is only a few years out from the failed backdoor pilot that was the TV movie. This was months before Big Finish started doing Doctor Who audios, let alone Paul McGann ones, and the idea of the movie being canon was still hotly contested by fans, partly because of the Doctor's romantic relationship with that movie's companion character, Grace Holloway, but Steven Moffat decided to lean into that by giving the Doctor a companion who he falls in love with and decides to settle down with. The main comedic inspiration for The Curse of Fatal Death, the title itself being a reference to the often silly and redundant titles of classic Doctor Who, like The Deadly Assassin, was the 1970 comedy The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which acted as an irreverent parody of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's characters, but still followed the internal mechanics and the rules of the detective series. No farce, no mockery. To quote Steven Moffat in a Doctor Who magazine interview,
"I'm not sure I would call this a parody or a spoof. I would call this a Doctor Who comedy, taking things from Doctor Who and realising them comedically, like the comedic possibilities of time travel. We don't break any rules. We don't have the Doctor do something he can't normally do. So I wouldn't call it a parody. The first rule we made was absolutely no jokes about shaking sets, or wobbly monsters, or crap acting."
The comedy, also taking inspiration from time travel comedies like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, would be filled with genuine references to the show's lore, and also bring back villains with legitimate portrayals, like the Daleks, voiced by Roy Skelton, and also the Master, played by Jonathan Pryce, a big name after being the last big Bond villain in Tomorrow Never Dies. And to round out the main cast, the Doctor's companion Emma was played by Julia Sawalha of Absolutely Fabulous fame, and, by coincidence, also got her breakout role in Steven Moffat's Press Gang a decade earlier, where she played Linda Day. Also, while there's no confirmation that Steven Moffat knew about this fact, in 1997, Julia was named in a Doctor Who magazine fan cast as a hopeful Doctor Who companion alongside actor Richard Griffiths as the Doctor, and it's a fun coincidence that only a few years later, this fan cast would sort of come to fruition. She had apparently been offered the role of Ace in the late 80s, but turned it down. However, for The Curse of Fatal Death, she spoke with Louise Jameson, who she saw as the archetypal strong female Doctor Who companion in Leela, as research for the project. And with director John Henderson attached, coming off the success of the Channel 4 TV movie Alice Through the Looking Glass and the Sue Virtue produced sitcom Hospital, the 20-minute sketch was filmed over the course of 3 days in late February 1999. Pinewood Studios, which was also hosting the next Bond movie, The World Is Not Enough, donated a studio space for free, but it was a tight schedule, as the actors also had other commitments to work around, like Julia would have to finish early to perform on stage in the evenings. And Steven Moffat was present on set should there be a need for hasty rewrites or alterations, with one example being a change to the Part 2 ending cliffhanger, which would have had Emma fall through a door accompanied by a freeze frame, a la Genesis of the Daleks, only for the next episode to reveal that she only fell a couple of inches. This was replaced by a door opening to reveal a bunch of Daleks on the other side. A behind-the-scenes documentary crew were present for the shoot, capturing incredible footage and interviews, including Jonathan Pryce, who did the whole interview in character as the Master. But before we get to all of that, let's actually talk about The Curse of Fatal Death proper. So the story opens with Jonathan Pryce as the Master spying on the Ninth Doctor, played by Rowan Atkinson. He's quickly rumbled, however, and is invited to the planet Tercerus to be on the receiving end of some game-changing news that the Doctor is going to retire and settle down with the love of his life, Emma. The Master's not having any of that, however, and teams up with the Daleks to take over the universe. It's up to the Doctor and Emma to save the galaxy one last time, and in doing so, the Doctor's regenerative abilities are pushed to their limits. I think the best way to start this review is talking about the top-billed star of the show, Rowan Atkinson. Now, I know he's internationally most recognised as Mr. Bean, but I always preferred him as Blackadder, the sardonic, down-on-his-luck man surrounded by idiots, but always on the lower rung of the pecking order. And I think that's what he's channeling with his version of the Doctor. From the first scene, where the Doctor is so nonchalant about the Master wanting to bring him down, you can tell that this is a Doctor who fears nothing and knows everything.
You are piloting your TARDIS into a deadly trap, and even you will not suspect until it's far too late.
You know, if you're going to spy on me, you really should turn the speaker off.
He strolls around, flawlessly delivering the exposition as it rolls effortlessly off his tongue with his trademark British wit. In the script, the Doctor's description reads, "Now in his 9th incarnation, he is elegant, immaculate, and super suave, with an air of artfully bored insouciance. He's been everywhere, done everything, and blown up every monster. When danger strikes, he rarely does more than roll his eyes at the lack of imagination among intergalactic psychopaths these days, before disrupting their plans, ending their evil dominion, and probably blowing up their planet if he thinks it won't get his jacket all creased. However, he has occasional flashes of fluster and panic, from which he recovers with a comic swiftness that serves to remind us how much effort he puts into being the cool, smart, impeccably dressed gentleman of the universe we now see emerging from the police box." It's a bit overwritten, but it will do. Obviously, it's hard to look back at this 25-year-old sketch and not see the parallels to Stephen Moffat's future work on the show when it was brought back a few years later. And yes, we'll get to the more superficial stuff later, but I think the idea of an ancient Doctor who is so well experienced and versed in the universe to the point of banality is one of the less commented upon aspects. I could 100% see Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi working exceptionally well with this exact same material.
Say hello to the spikes of doom.
Say hello to the sofa of reasonable comfort.
And here's where the Bill and Ted inspirations come in, with Stephen Moffat fully leaning into this not only being a show about a time traveller, but where one of his biggest enemies can also travel in the fourth dimension, with the Doctor and the Master one-upping each other by bribing the architect of the castle Tercerus to lay traps for each other, resulting in the Master falling down a trap hole to the sewer, which he then has to spend 312 years climbing out of, multiple times, each time becoming more aged, unhinged and dishevelled, leading to, in my opinion, the funniest line of the special.
Die, Doctor! Die!
Don't worry. I believe he knows the way out.
That line is delivered so well by Rowan Atkinson that I genuinely want him to get a Tom Baker-style 7-season run as an actual Doctor.
Perhaps for the money in my purse.
You have a woman's purse!
For the purposes of this sketch, however, I think having such a hyper-capable Doctor means that Julia Sawalha's Emma is pretty underwritten, to the extent where I can't tell if it's a deliberate joke at the expense of classic series companions just standing around and asking questions, or if there's just not much to this character outside of feisty Doctor Who companion. Oh hey look, there's another parallel. Not to sound pedantic, but she gets 8 lines of dialogue in the first half of this story, and only 2 of them aren't questions. The character is so one-dimensional and interchangeable that one recurring joke in an early draft of the script had the Doctor mixing Emma's name up with other companions, like Leela, even calling her the Brigadier at one point. There's just not anything here, not even for the sake of comedy, which I think is a shame. If you go through the making of documentary for this special, they double down on how bad and ineffectual classic Doctor Who companions were.
Well, she never really got to do much, did she, the assistant, so it was always...
When you are told to speak!
So I think it's meant to be an ironic portrayal, but Emma doesn't act anything like that in this special, so I think this is one of the rare parts of this story that misses the mark. As is typical with a Stephen Moffat comedy, it's the men who get all of the fun, with Jonathan Pryce as the Master, who was barely aware of Doctor Who, but had an extensive research period for this special.
I did extensive research for this role. Of course, there have been many masters in the past, and I looked long and intently at a photograph of one of them for seconds.
In all seriousness, he's the embodiment of a pantomime villain here, like Anthony Ainley's incarnation, but turned up to 11. As the Doctor has become more suave and stoic with his old age, the Master has just descended into lunacy. But Stephen Moffat didn't seem to have a positive opinion of the Master as a character going into this, and I think that reflects in this interpretation.
I think the Master is terrible. He doesn't notice that he always loses. He loses catastrophically on every single occasion that he meets the Doctor. And he still is saying, "Ah, Doctor, you foolishly got in the way of my fantastic plan." And the Doctor saying, "Get off, your plans are always crap. You couldn't even stop the Magna Carta from getting signed. So what's your chance against the Daleks?" I mean, come on.
With this in mind, it kind of makes sense how in the future, Moffat loved teaming up the Master with another villain to bring out a different dimension to them, whether it be the Cybermen, the Daleks, or at one point, another Master. And in The Curse of Fatal Death, the Master has to team up with the Daleks because of his misadventures in the sewers driving every other species with noses away, with Jan Sewell providing the old age makeup on the Master, having previously aged up Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders for TV sketches. At one point in old age makeup, Jonathan Pryce went into the studio next door filming the next James Bond movie to say hi and surprise them. But yeah, the Master is augmented with Dalek technology, aka just a sink plunger, and gets knocked into the sewers again. This is like Looney Tunes style comedy and I'm all here for it. After running down identical corridors, the Daleks corner the Doctor and Emma, which brings us into the second half of the sketch, which takes place at Dalek HQ. The Daleks have teamed up with the Master to harness the power of a Zedtronic energy beam, which will allow them to take over the universe within minutes.
With just a beam? How?
I'll explain later.
References like this showcase why Stephen Moffat, nepotism aside, legitimately was an ideal fit for this sketch, because he's genuinely a massive fan of Doctor Who and can irreverently poke fun at the show's legacy, the "I'll explain later" bit being directly inspired by the 5th Doctor.
What is it?
We're in trouble. I'll explain later.
Where have you been?
I'll explain later. Where's my TARDIS?
Look, what's been going on?
The Doctor will explain later.
It's not big enough. Something else for me to explain later.
Obviously, the structure here is different to his future 45-minute episodes, but there's still that spark of whatever makes the story more exciting, or I'm the Doctor, just accept it, rationale to be found here, for better or for worse.
You fools! This Zedtronic beam controller will now not only explode, it will implode! We're doomed!
There's also some genuinely good storytelling to be found here. The Doctor discovers the Daleks' plan to exterminate the Master once he's outlived his usefulness, so concocts a scheme to communicate this knowledge by speaking Terceran.
Think, my dear. Back on Tercerus, the Master and I both bribed the castle architect. Not only do I speak perfect Terceran, but so does he.
This is genuinely solid cause and effect storytelling, as well as the Master being rejuvenated from his 900-year-old body with Dalek technology. He even has Dalek bumps.
The Dalek bumps. They can detect ion-charged emissions and operate as etheric beam locators at a distance of up to 20,000 light years.
But the Time Lords conspiring results in them being rumbled, the Daleks retaliating and damaging the Zectronic beam controller and killing the Ninth Doctor, who regenerates. And this is where we get into the iconic stunt casting for these new charity doctors, all of whom have their own official titles. Firstly, we have Richard E. Grant as the quite handsome Doctor, described in the script as the sort of swaggering vulgarian the previous Doctor would have loathed on sight. And then you realise why there's a random mirror on a Dalek spaceship, so that Richard can just lick it.
Result: cute, sexy, and lick the mirror handsome.
He's not around for long, but it's so fun seeing this iconic actor just lean into the bravado. Apparently, the only pages of the script he read were his own, and found the whole thing very confusing, but it doesn't compromise the performance. He has such bite and swagger. I adore it.
I remember you, don't I?
And you still fear me, Doctor?
You're the camp one.
I'm not camp.
Oh, yeah. Nice tits.
The Daleks plead with the Doctor to save them, and he obliges.
What better way to end my career than saving you little gits?
God, I could watch an entire story with this Doctor. Oh wait, I can!
That's it! Take me home, big boy!
But through a series of mistakes fixing the beam controller, the Doctor speedruns several incarnations, starting with Jim Broadbent as the Shy Doctor.
Oh dear. Seem to be a bit shy of girls now.
Funnily enough, this isn't even Jim Broadbent's first time as the Doctor. He played a version for the Victoria Wood sketch show in 1987.
Hello, Crayola.
Doctor, it's been a long time!
Eons.
As long as that, you don't look a day over 5 million. How do you do it?
Table tennis.
Honestly, it's fun to see him here, but there's not a lot going on, other than him just bouncing around avoiding eye contact.
Oh dear, another girl.
Next we get Hugh Grant as the handsome Doctor. And yeah, now we all know and love Hugh Grant as the star of Paddington 2, but this was 1999, and Hugh Grant was one of the biggest stars in the world after the success of Four Weddings and a Funeral, Sense and Sensibility, and he was about to explode further with Notting Hill in just a few months' time. In retrospect, it's genuinely insane that Comic Relief managed to bring him in for a Doctor Who sketch of all things. It's also worth remembering that this was filmed on a closed set, and none of these other incarnations were present in the marketing or publicity for this. Heck, Doctor Who magazine's issue talking about the production had to apologise for the lateness of their coverage because, well, the team had to keep all of this a secret, including the casting of Joanna Lumley as the 13th Doctor, an actor who was actually rumoured for the role of the Doctor after Peter Davison and Colin Baker announced their respective departures in the 80s. And honestly, as great as this casting is, it's hard to get past how the main joke here is just Woman Doctor. She gets one line of dialogue where she actually resembles the Time Lord we love.
We can still rattle around the universe, fighting monsters and saving planets. What could be more fun? My best friend by my side, my trusty old TARDIS, and of course, my sonic screwdriver.
But every other line that comes out of her mouth is just a sex gag. Stephen Moffat, the one-handed writer, strikes again here.
Look, it's got 3 settings.
Now, to be fair, this was the late 90s, and Doctor Who was a long-gone relic of TV, so it was deliberately appealing to a broader, older audience with sex gags, fart jokes and slapstick, and while a lot of it does land, a lot of it just reads as of its time. It's why, outside of the stunt cast Doctors having a lot of fun, the second half of The Curse of Fatal Death doesn't hold up nearly as well as the time travel shenanigans of the first half. But, like I said, and not to be accused of being a party pooper, I'm only looking back on it a bit more critically, because we actually would get more Doctor Who after this. Kind of like how fans are way more accepting of the TV movie now than they were in 1996, because we know that this slightly different version for the franchise wasn't the final outing, and in hindsight, it's the minor details that are present throughout the entire production that I appreciate the most. Like the depiction of the Daleks, which actually feels very authentic despite them being in a parody. with the exception of this inspired moment where Roy Skelton actually whispers the dialogue when the Dalek Supreme is covertly talking to the Doctor.
You may conquer the universe, but you'll have to share it with the beard and the bosoms over there.
The Master will be exterminated when he has served his purpose.
I find that so insanely funny, and it's just great that actual Dalek voice actor Roy Skelton made one more triumphant return to voice the Pepper Potts. That black and gold design unironically goes really hard, incidentally. I love how when the Master bursts through the castle doors after his second trip through the sewers, all of the Daleks manage to turn their eye stalks at the same time. Due to the amount of props donated from various fan films for this sketch, there are more Daleks here than had ever been seen on screen before in the show proper. Also, the TARDIS set was donated from the creators of the Devious fan film starring Jon Pertwee. But that whole project is deserving of its own video. While the Time Rotor isn't supposed to be so violently thrusting, it's kind of indicative of the whole production. Fans who grew up loving Doctor Who actually getting to put something fun together for charity. The inmates here were running the asylum. Stephen Moffat, the guy who grew up loving the show, shooting what he thought was his one shot to write for it, and fan creatives coming together to recreate the iconography, including but not limited to Mark Ayers, who refitted classic pieces of music for the episode, as well as throwing in 2 new original music cues. And while director John Henderson had never watched the show before, he borrowed as many tapes as he could from the BBC and watched 15 hours of classic Doctor Who for research. And you know what? I think he managed to capture the visual spirit of 1980s Doctor Who. All these people who actually gave a shit about Doctor Who came together to give it an affectionate send-off a decade after it was thought to be done forever. It's with this in mind, Emma's plea to the Doctor at the end to not die comes across more as a wish than a eulogy for this magical, silly show to come back.
Doctor, listen to me. You can't die. You're too nice. Too brave, too kind, and far, far too silly. You're like Father Christmas, the Wizard of Oz, Scooby-Doo. And I love you very much. And we all need you, and you simply cannot die. He was never cruel and never cowardly, and it'll never be safe to be scared again.
And clearly, Doctor Who did still hold a place in audiences' hearts. An average of 8.4 million viewers tuned in for the 4 parts over the course of the night, which, barring the TV movie, was the most watched Doctor Who story since 1985's Attack of the Cybermen. It was, by far, the most viewed event of the telethon, and £49 million was raised over the course of the event. While it would still take a few more years for the BBC to commit to making more Doctor Who, I think it's reasonable to assume that on that night, 25 years ago, some light bulbs went off in the heads of some BBC producers that there was still life in this silly blue box show. Stephen Moffat would be involved in the 2005 revival, as well as showrunning the show between 2010 and 2017, and there's a lot of parallels to be found from the dialogue.
I'll explain later.
Where have you been?
Explain later. Into the TARDIS with you in a sec.
Look after the universe for me. I've put a lot of work into it.
You are not of this world.
No, but I've put a lot of work into it.
Look after the universe for me. Put a lot of work into it.
Why'd you have chairs on a Dalek spaceship anyway?
The only other chair on Skaro.
It's impossible. Beyond all known laws of the universe.
Maybe even the universe can't bear to be without the Doctor.
You've decided that the universe is better off without you, but the universe doesn't agree.
The Master teaming up with the Daleks, along with the Time Lord and Dalek hybrid, an older Doctor wanting to stop running and settle down with the love of his life, the timey-wimey bribing of the architect, and even Stephen Moffat writing an incessantly horny comic relief special. While the fart jokes and the sex jokes won't be everyone's cup of tea, I can understand why they went so broad with the humour. Heck, the farts were originally going to tie into the Doctor equipping a gastric gas translator device, which would just be a red comic relief nose that he would wear. But the basic fundamentals here are so strong that even if I'm not laughing throughout, I'm having a good time and appreciating the efforts of all involved. For one night only, in 1999, Screen Legends could briefly make their stamp on the Doctor Who universe, raise money for good causes, and give us a glimpse into the future at what more Doctor Who could look like. Check out this clip from the 2001 VHS release, which had behind the scenes interviews.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. Well done. Thank you very much.
So it's all over, but the big question remains, will the Doctor ever be back for good?
I'd love to do Doctor Who for real, but I don't know if they've got any serious plans to resurrect it, and I hope we haven't written it off forever. We certainly used up the rest of the Doctor's incarnations, so we might, but hopefully not.
Hey folks, thank you so much for watching this review of The Curse of Fatal Death. I know it's a month late. I was hoping to have it ready last month in March for the episode's 25th anniversary, but I missed that. I apologise, but hopefully it was worth the wait. And hey, while you're here, be sure to hit that like button, leave any comment down below, let me know what you thought of this review and also the special. And also subscribe. It really helps me out. We recently passed 40,000 subscribers and your support means the world. Speaking of support, thank you so much to The Lower Decker and DC63 Productions for sponsoring this video, along with my other patrons as well who do help to keep the lights on here. If you want to get your name in the credits, if you want to sponsor this video, if you want to get early access to these videos, then please do consider becoming a patron, and I want to give a shout out to these specific patrons: Adam Grattan, Ben Langdon, Brandon Kay, Tuba City Blues, Christopher McDonald, Daniel Davis, Darren Carver-Bausiger, DC63 Productions, Dean Jones, Dreamer Who, Dylan Whitaker, Air Hoovian, High Lord Wolnir, Jack D. Evans, Jonathan Jimenez Mejica, Joseph Adams, Lard Dragon Ezra, Leela, Maria Bergman, Marianne Mogensen, Mario Fanboy 15, Michael Serrano, Miranda Logan, Nick M, Palex, Pat Andrews, Randall Sprinkle, Raven Woods, Reese Lloyd, Ross A.T. Stewart, Ryan Duncan, Sam Montgomery, Samuel Whitaker, Sarah Parker Shemilt, Scott Johnson, The Evil Dalek, The Brit Sniper, The Scarlet Watcher, Thomas Price, and Will. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.